with footy bikes. There was no bike infrastructure, but today it's one of the most nicely bike-friendly cities around. And so they've made a lot of progress. And it's about leadership, and it's about vision, and it's about knowing what makes a great city. This is Seoul, Korea. Underneath this highway was a river, and it carried over 100,000 cars a day. And the mayor had the highway removed. Didn't do anything. Didn't have any car carrying capacity anywhere else. And the city got better. And it's now the second biggest tourist attraction in Korea, is that river. And he became president, but when he was very popular after that. And the same things happened in North America. Well, it might not all of you remember the earthquake in 1986 that knocked down the Embarcadero Highway. And there's this big debate about what are we going to do? And there's 100 or 120,000 cars a day using that. Caltrans said we need that highway for people to get to work, Anyway, they argued about it long enough. People realized they didn't need it. People were getting to work just fine. And they built this. And so there's actually more trip making happening. But the trips on foot, by bike, chain trips together. It's a more vibrant, beautiful place than it ever was when the highway was there. They never needed the highway. This is Milwaukee. This highway came down to 2002. Same argument. It's the highest and best use on the waterfront was parking lots. And now it's homes and things like that. They didn't need the highway. We're talking to more than 2 more highways from the city. This is Chattanooga, Tennessee. Brand new aquarium in their downtown to help revitalize the downtown. But people just drove in, went to the aquarium, and drove out. It was supposed to create restaurants and businesses and walkability, but we call this a silver bullet. What was missing was walkability and bikeability. It wasn't a place. It wasn't a coherent city. It didn't have a downtown grid that was really nicely connected. It used to, but it was cut off and one ways and this kind of thing that specialized the city for motoring. So the design team developed this vision with the taking medallions of the community to remove this big road and put in a 2-lane street with access to the waterfront. And there was this big clash of paradigms. The Tennessee DOT told us that the highway's the lifeblood of the city and that it has to be there to fight congestion, and removing it's anti-progress. And the city-friendly people are saying, no, it's walkability is more important. We need trails, and it's contributing to the problems, and we need it to advance the urban context. We need access to the waterfront. So you have the traditional paradigm and the conventional paradigm at odds here. So that's the before picture right by the aquarium. And here's the after picture. And so we won. So the big highway came out, and then and now it's a really vibrant place. And people still get to work. In fact, there's more jobs and there's more housing, there's more social exchange, there's more economic exchange than ever before when the big fast road was there. Ask anybody there if they wanted the highway back. You'll get run out of town. Interesting, though, the Tennessee DOT now agrees it's a good project. So when you have these debates around Peterborough or anywhere else, like let's say you wanted to restore your 2-way operations on was it George Street or Waters? Streets like that. You're going to have a camp saying, no, we need it for levels of service and for throughput. And we've been really good at synchronizing those signals. You don't have to stop. And then you got some other people saying, well, no, we want the businesses to prosper and we want it to be more walkable and slower and safer and more inclusive. So you're going to have these 2 paradigms fighting. And you're going to be using technical reasons. But what's really going on is you're arguing about which paradigm should prevail in Peterborough. Are we a conventional city that thrives on motordom? Or are we a traditional city that thrives on things like proximity and mixes and that kind of thing, mix of land uses? So it's always a paradigm. Like if you were talking about taking out a highway out of a city, same camps. If you're talking about removing a left turn lane or right turn lane, you always get the same camps. So it's usually a proxy fight over which paradigm should prevail. Anytime you have controversy, it's usually a proxy fight over which one of these should prevail. And we're going to go into some examples. I'm going to talk about some small cities. This is Winter Garden, Florida. And it's right in the middle of the state. And it was prospering before the car was invented. So they made a lot of citrus products, and there was this rail line, and it stopped at all these places to pick up oranges and ship them up north, so we can eat oranges. And there was all these different companies. They invented frozen orange juice there, and during World War II, they shipped it all over the world for the soldiers. And so it was really prospering, and they had this fantastic bass fishing role there as well. So the city was doing great, but the farming around the area, the chemicals there actually killed the fishing industry. And then 3 frosts came through in the 80s and killed off the citrus industry. And it moved south. You couldn't get crop insurance anymore. So there are 2 entities, and this book was written about it, called The Lost Decade. So 20 years were just total decline. People left, businesses shuttered. It was total disinvestment, 20 years. And that's when we showed up. And this is what it looked like. Empty stores, well, they used it for storage. And this was the main street. And it's about throughput. Now, they paved over the rail line. It used to be a rail line out there. But, look at this is 25 miles an hour. So was that 40K? But who's going to drive 40K on that? Like, you're not. They're going to go way faster. And it was hot and ugly. And about 80% of the stores were vacant. And so we thought, okay, we need to maximize social and economic exchange. So we redesigned the street for exchange and not throughput. And that's what it looks like now. And people come from all over because it's a great place. They want to spend time there. They want to shop. And right away, stores started opening. One of the big things, because this is a trail, was cycling. So people came up the trail on their bikes. And about 25% of the downtown economy now comes off that trail. We made the sidewalks wider. That's the most important thing you can do on a main street, is to have wide sidewalks. The second thing is street trees. And then slow speeds. Your streets in your downtown are where you should have the most social and economic exchange in your whole city. The whole city is about social and economic exchange. Your downtown is where it should be concentrated. And on your main street, it should be uncompromisingly about social and economic exchange. That's its real role. And so we have wide sidewalk street, slow speeds. You can see we use the texture in the street to keep the speeds down. And valley gutters, this is the lowest part of the street right here, to optically narrow the street, and bulb out so you can cross the street with shorter crossing distances. And then some of these sort of rules of thumb we've developed over the years. In so many downtowns, there's all these extensive lanes, and the sidewalks are too narrow. Just get rid of them and repurpose that space for better things, like infrastructure, walking, street trees, things that make a city not just a thoroughfare. And I'll show you an example in a little bit about getting rid of all the surplus traffic signals that you've got, and create places like that. Parking. Everywhere we go, there's a shortage of parking. That's what people say. And it's actually not as important as people think, but because people know about on-street parking, that's what they want to talk about. But there's all these other things, all these other purposes of streets that have been pushed aside, and we have to bring those to the forefront. So we'll look at that more in a minute. And then engaging. We want the buildings. We have this 8 to 10 second rule. When you're walking along a sidewalk, the facades in your downtown should change about every 8 to 10 seconds because it's interesting and it holds your attention. So you're willing to walk further, and your businesses are going to do better. And so you can look at some of your old photographs of downtown Peterborough, and you've got these beautiful facade changes, and then you can see some of the modern buildings that are really big and really boring. And so it detracts from that engagement. And so think about your form-based code. And then this is an interesting picture because not only shows the facades changing, but what's going on here and here. Now, when we were doing this project, parking was the most important thing, right? And if you came into town and said, I want to take away some parking spaces, they'd say, no, you can't do it. It's going to kill my business. So during the pandemic, the businesses couldn't gather people inside. So they took away parking spaces and built these sort of corrals to effectively widen the sidewalks for more seating area outside, here and here. Now that the pandemic's basically over, it was, well, do you want your parking back? Absolutely not. The wide sidewalks and all the seating is more important. So we had a real live test about how really important this is. This is actually way more important than storing private property in the public realm. So this is the trail. About 100,000 visitors a month come from it. As some of the previous speakers talked about, it's affordable, it's healthy, and that kind of thing. And the first phase of it that we did was about 23 miles long, about 30-something kilometers. And there's so much to do there. Your street should offer all kinds of opportunities, from just places for grandma to their grandkid, places to play, stores to go to, festivals. This is a mom and her son playing at one of the fountains we put in the median and in the street. People just chilling, and they're going to buy an ice cream. And then this is a new building, but it fits in. And so respect your history and your architecture, and it attracts all kinds of people. And then the prosperity of your Georges and Waters and so forth starts spilling into other streets and down alleys, and starts to create sort of a catalytic effect in your downtown. And then it adds to your identity. So we designed this, our design team designed this entry feature, and it became the logo for the city. And so this is important. It's the way people think about Winter Garden. So you go there, and it's not like the suburbs where you pick your restaurant and drive to it. You just go downtown and then you figure it out when you get there because there's so many choices. That's the kind of downtown you want. And by the way, that 23 miles, folks keep adding to this thing. And it's going to go from the Gulf of Mexico to the Atlantic soon. There's just a couple of gaps that fill in. And so if you start building your trails, it's a very important investment, because eventually, I don't remember where you were going to connect to. Somebody connected there and start connecting all over the place, and it'll really help your social and economic exchange, and it'll really help your economy. Now, the part you just saw was just up here. This is 1 kilometer away on the same street. And this shows you what happens with conventional values. And that showed you what happens with traditional values. And who wants to live there, or walk there, or shop there, or ride a bike? Yeah. It's just not friendly, is it? This is, these are 3 trails in a park. This one can carry more people, and it's easier to maintain. This one's made out of stone dust, so too many people start making it rough. If too many people use this one, they wear out the forest floor. So but the experience is nice here, because when you're walking on a real forest floor, it's kind of spongy, and it's a living thing, and so you're immersed in the experience of enjoying a forest. The smells, the sights, the sounds, it's fantastic. The experience is diminished here, but it's less maintenance. So we call it a hard space and a soft space. So this is a prison cell. It's a hard space. That's a living room. It's a soft space. People prefer to spend time here and not here. But for all the years who care about maintenance, this is way easier to maintain. So this is a classroom. This is like when I was a kid, my table was bolted to my chair. Really sucked if you're left-handed. And this is a modern classroom. Now it's harder to maintain, but kids learn better in that softer environment. These are 2 restaurants. This is plastic chair that's bolted to the ground. You can't move it. But it's designed to get you in and out, and it's easy to maintain. They don't want you to spend time here. And this is a really nice sit-down restaurant, and you could spend 2 or 3 hours there, draw up a ton of change, and have a great time. So if I plot, being an engineer, I thought I better plot this, right? So this is the value of the experience. This is how I could be able to maintain. This is hard and soft. So the hard environment's low value, but easy to maintain. This is high value and harder to maintain, costs more to maintain it. Then these are 2 streets, and this one's a hard street, and this one's a soft street. there's two women pushing their babies, carriages. Who is having the better experience? Who wants to stop and have a coffee at the cafe? Who's going to meet their friends there for birthdays? So this one is attracting people that want to stay and experience it, and the other one isn't. But this one is easy to maintain. So I plotted it. So even I understand what it says. So typically when we design main streets or downtown streets, we try and soften them so people want to spend time there and shop more and meet their friends there or live there or bike there or walk there. So but we know when we soften it, the maintenance costs go up. That's true. They do go up. There we go. But the value curve is different. So for a small amount of softening, you can get a huge uptick in value. And that's why it's a good investment to soften your streets where you want people to spend time, either on foot, on bike, or at a cafe or whatever, or window shopping. You see a lot of value. And if you have clever designers and good landscape architects, you can design this stuff so it's not hugely hard to maintain, but you can get a big uptick in value. And this curve looks like this. So for a small increase in maintenance, you get a big increase in softening, at a huge increase in value. So that's what we try and achieve. So typically when we're going to a new city, it's the public works director, somebody's saying, oh, I don't have the budget for this. We have to keep it hard and ugly because I don't have the budget. Now, when you think about the size of your downtown compared to the rest of your city, it's not that big. And when you compare the main street, it's even smaller. And when you think about this, it's actually good for your tax base. It's good for your identity. It's good to attract new companies in because you have high quality of life. This is a really good investment. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the West Palm story. So I got to West Palm Beach in 1996. I left beautiful Ottawa, nice, safe Ottawa, and ended up, and we had $7,000 in reserves as a city. We were broke. We had a huge drug problem and prostitution problem. Anybody who had choice left the city to the suburbs. We tore down half our buildings to make room for surface parking lots to accommodate the traffic coming in. My predecessors had widened and sped up the roads and made them one way. This is a documentary that was definitely set produced in the United States. And it was nominated for an Academy Award and it was filmed in our downtown. This is how everybody knew West Palm Beach was all our problems. Now, Palm Beach was the wealthy place across the Intercoastal Waterway. We were the servant community for them. It got so bad that they wanted to lift up the bridges at night. So we wouldn't go and steal their TVs, you know. And this is where they went, courtesy of these big fast roads. And then they bombed their city with cars after that. And this is what was left in downtown, just these underutilized properties, empty properties, boarded up buildings, completely empty blocks. And the mayor of West Palm Beach, Nancy Graham, decided that she was going to do something about it. Newly elected, and so she had this vision drawn up and fantastic. And we drew all the buildings and everything. It was beautiful. And my job was to design the streets to match that land use vision. But all of my training was conventional. It was all about synchronizing signals and speeding things up. And this is what happens. You know, we specialized our streets for speed to so-called spread out value, but it completely devalued the city and created barriers. And this Dixie Highway was the whole length of the United States. And this building was closed vacant for so long that the windows broke somehow, and enough flies died in the building to support small trees, like right here. And so that's how long our city had been disinvested in. And I was standing there on a Sunday morning thinking, how the heck can I make this nice? And during the weekdays, it was chock-a-block with congestion in the morning and afternoon. So I decided that there's just too much space used for cars. And so I decided I was going to take some of it back and use it for walking and trees and stuff. And so I did. The other thing was, this is an arterial street, and I raised the intersections so that pedestrians could cross at the level, and the cars had to slow down. They're going over the, and I was told by all my colleagues, all the other engineers, said you can't do that. You can't put raised intersections on, busy streets like this. Well, I did, and so there's one at every intersection through the downtown, and it was fine. It was not a problem, and drivers go through fine. This is the street where the term road diet was coined, by the way. It's Olive Avenue, 5 lanes wide, super barrier, and we narrowed it to 2 lanes, added enclosure. We had shared use paths on both sides. There's 2 elementary schools on the street, so really helped the kids get to school. This is North Dixie Highway. It was a commuter route and just too fast. It really hurt the neighborhood. So we turned it to a 2-lane street with lateral shifts with a linear park on the side. Right away, people started walking and cycling. It changed the vibe of the neighborhood. The boards came off the houses, and new families moved in. It really changed the place socially and economically, and obviously aesthetically. This is our one-way pathetic main street that was 80% vacant. And every time we've two-wayed a street, restored two-way operation, we always say restore. We don't say convert. We say restore it because it used to be two-way. And so we restored it to two-way and went from 80% vacant to 100% full. Very vibrant, slow things down. You got to get the speed down. Empty buildings that have been empty for 20 years. Now have a waiting list to live there. And when you look at your one-way streets, the one-way streets help the conventional paradigm, avoiding long trips, speeding up traffic, less vibrancy. The traditional paradigm, two ways, it rewards the short trips, it increases proximities, it nurtures businesses. I can't think of one time where we've restored two-way operations, whether it's in Ann Arbor or in Florida or wherever it was, where the city didn't get better every time. So the conventional arguments to keep one-way streets is you want progression. So they talk about how great the signal progression is. It helps longer trips drive through your city fast. And if you have a highway, it lends itself to the ramps nicely. So those are the big advantages of one-way streets from a conventional way of thinking. But I won't go through all these, but from a city-making perspective, it's hands down better to have two-way streets. And you've got such a nice street network in here. You don't need that car carrying capacity in one-way streets. You're fine with two-lane, two-way streets. You've only got, 84,000 people? You've got a fantastic street network. You know right away that would be fine. So this is then back to West Palm. So this area was like central for Crack America, the filming. And the only building you're going to recognize afterwards is this building. The rest, we changed the streets, and the private sector fixed up the blocks. They were mostly vacant. They were torn down for code violations or whatever. And that's after. So we did the streets and the infrastructure. The private sector invested over $3 billion in this 70-acre area. And now we had a tax base. We had more than $7,000 in reserves. And there were no drug dealers hanging out here because there's so much legitimate activity going on that it became a nice city again. This was an old church that had been long abandoned, and we turned it into a performing arts center with a public space. And before we had to worry about, when I took this picture, I had to worry about where I stepped because there was used rusty syringes on the ground, and this is where the prostitutes would bring their johns and that kind of thing. So, and then we made it into this really nice place, and you would go there with your family, have dinner there, and go watch a concert. And then when all this was going on, I was taking away car carrying capacity on all these arterials in the city, and the city kept getting better. But my colleagues at the county and the Metropolitan Planning Organization had a model, a traffic model, and it said that they needed the lanes, not just now, but for the future. And I said, every time we do these things, the city gets better. Every time you widened and sped up the streets, it got worse. So there's a pattern here. And so they said, well, you need to prove it with a model. They're going to sue us. They're going to take us to court. So we said, fine, take us to court. And what we were going to base our case on was we were going to put the traffic demand forecast model on trial. And then as soon as they knew that, they dropped the case. Because we said, are you going to believe what you see in real cities, real places like Copenhagen? That was our model. Or do you believe the output of a traffic demand forecast model? And so every single place where we do these things, the models generally work against us. It's almost part of the problem. It's like pseudoscience to defend the conventional paradigm. So you have to be yourself. You travel on your vacation. So think about what they did in those other cities. Why did you go there? So this is the what we call universal equation for transportation planning and land use plan. And this is what the best cities in the world do to increase their economies and their populations while reducing their traffic. This is what Copenhagen did, Oslo did, Paris is doing. This is what's happening in South Bend, Indiana, a little bit in Seattle, but places like that. So you want your vehicle miles traveled to go down because of safety, inclusiveness, pollution. So you want that to go down. But you want your economy to go up. So in transportation, we can measure economy by trips, education trips, social trips, shopping trips. You want more trips. But to get your trips to go up and your traffic to go down, you have to affect these other two metrics. So you need to lower your average trip length, and you do that through either land use planning or restoring your two-way streets, this kind of thing. There's a whole bunch of examples of how to do that. And then there's changing your modal split. There you go. And this is about things like making walking and biking more friendly and transit friendly. But there's lots of other things you can do to reinforce this pattern. And it's about creating great cities. So if you want a great city, use this as your litmus test. Test every decision, every policy, every project you think about against this. And if it helps it, it's a good idea. And if it doesn't, you're harming your city. So that is a really good first cut at whether you want to do something or not. This is the diagram of a city that was urban, just like yours, and then it started to build suburbs. And the lines above the horizon are the revenues, taxes per acre or taxes per hectare, and the expenses, the things that the public has to provide, like police service and pipes and water service, all this sort of thing. Those expenses are below. Now the suburbs, the low density suburbs, do not generate the revenues that it costs to maintain them. And so the cities that have the biggest suburban areas don't have money for nice things anymore. They're strapped. They're spending all their money on infrastructure to support the suburbs. And it's the urban areas, the older places, that fund these suburbs. And if you follow this pattern long enough, you'll eventually reach a point where you can't afford things like after-school care and public swimming pools and all these things that you want to have in your city. You're spending it all on this. And so you can start seeing this at the edges of Peterborough. And be very careful because if that pattern continues, eventually their costs will deplete the surpluses that are generated here, and you're going to start getting into economic issues. And there's a firm called Urban 3 that's all they do is study this, and they look at the pattern. It's all over North America, Canada, and the States. And this is the pattern. And so think about your form-based code. This is very profitable at the beginning for the developers, but the forever costs are what you guys are paying, and you have to really think about that and start building more traditionally, more urban. Oops. So when I was in school, mobility was the easy movement, the dependable movement of goods, and the faster and the greater volume, the better, was according to the professors. And they never questioned why people were moving or what they were moving for. But if the street was busy, they would widen it because they called it the demand. That's the demand, and we have to accommodate it. Now, there's different transects, different sort of context zones. Most places have some version of this. So there's rural areas and natural areas, and it goes into very dense urban cores. So you have different contexts. But my professor was using the same definition for mobility in all of these places. And easy movement in the cities created all the rules we just finished talking about. So it's not context sensitive. So we need a definition that's city friendly. So this is what we've developed. It's the population's capabilities and strategies to move in order to access what people, access right where people need to live and thrive in a city. And the populations vary. There's young people, elderly people, different income levels. There's people with disabilities. There's all sorts of people that live in cities that all have mobility needs that were ignored previously. So the idea is to mix these things up. This is what people move for. And there's a cartoon about it. Eliminating land use and density, reduce my area and trip lengths by about 85%. So this guy's got he needs really close by. So that's the idea. You build a city with everything nearby. And so, so access is purposeful. And when you think about all the different populations, access is a good base to equity. And if you think about it all together, it advances economic and social exchange, which is, we can make this work. It aligns with the purpose of cities that we covered earlier. And so really think about that. That's why we're doing this. So I only have a couple of minutes left. What slide I'm on? I only have 4 more slides to go. I'm going to ask you a question now. Which has more mobility? What was going on in the 1920s or today? It was pretty clear, right? I'm going to skip to the end. I just want to talk about flush streets for a second. So we're designing more and more flush streets because they're really good for people in wheelchairs. And so here's a before picture. There's the flush street. There's a flush street in front of a basketball arena. And at nighttime, they close it to cars and it becomes a plaza. You can do all kinds of things. It's really beautiful. During the day, you can do events too. It's so popular now that we tore this parking garage down to remove it to create a whole entertainment area. This is a campus on the university, and that's the design vehicle right there. The guy in the wheelchair. He now can get everywhere all the other students can, and it's just the right thing to do. But what about folks who can't see? They use curves, they use building edges to navigate. So we've gone to New Zealand, we've gone to Australia, we've gone to Japan, we've studied what the best countries do to create tactile guidance so that people can get around plazas, large buildings like airports, and flush environments in the built environment. And it's using these different tactile surfaces, the warning surfaces, the guidance indicators, and the delineator strips. And it's these 3 things. It's like a little code, and you can follow it really easily with your foot or your cane. This is that airport with tactile guidance, and folks can follow it. It leads to everything. This is a train station. It leads you to the gates. It leads you to your platforms. Everything that's important you can get through just by following the tactile guidance. Even in the suburbs, they use it to get to the bus stops and that kind of thing. So we've been developing a North American set of guidelines. Things simple stuff like how do you create a legible place with tactile guidance in some environment like this where it's just a raised section, or a complicated one where there's 2 flush streets that intersect, and then everything in between. And so it was for the city South Bend where they needed this guidance from soup to nuts for any environment. How do you do flush environments that are friendly for people with vision disabilities? So we're starting to implement this with some test places in the United States, and we're hoping it becomes just normal practice all across the country. Okay, I've got 2 minutes. I'm just going to go to the cool part. This city had a ton of one-way streets, and this is South Bend, Indiana, so it's a little bigger than you guys. It's 105,000 people or something like that. And their industries left, so they were kind of hollowed out. But the engineers had these one-way fast streets going through town, and I don't think there's a single one-way street left. And some of them were 4 lanes wide. Let's show you a picture. 4 lanes wide. Look at the size of a light bulb. Like that's like on a 400 series highway. And that's on the waterfront. And so that street, the 2-lane street with separated bike facilities and street trees and investment. And the opponents to this said, no, we need that one-way street for throughput, and argued against this. And the mayor said, no, I think I want a better city. And so now they have a better city. Hundreds of millions of dollars investment came here. People came back. People started occupying the neighborhoods again. It became a really nice, vibrant place. So in closing, I'm going to close. Let's get to it. That's a hybrid removal, by the way, that we just went by, which is going to make turn into Flush Street. I just want to mention that your city's 13 kilometers long. You've only got 54,000 people. You're within a 20-minute bike ride of probably everything you need on a daily basis, if you have the infrastructure to support it. So if you change your thinking, if you change your values to be pro-city and not just pro-throughput, you could build Copenhagen here. And you could have a very walkable, bikeable, friendly city, and your businesses will do better. You'll have a better identity. You'll attract investment in people here. So here's a little suggestion for a vision. Make Peterborough a two-lane, two-way town where it's feasible to walk and cycle directly and comfortably to every destination. And some of the earlier speakers are talking about not just safe, but the experiential stuff, the quality, the comfort. It's not just having safe street isn't good enough. You have to have streets that are comfortable because you want people to actually use them. If they're uncomfortable, people won't use it. So it has to be safe and comfortable. And with that, I think this is the last closing slide. So history, you remember, we used to think the Earth was in the middle of the solar system. And Galileo and Copernicus came along and said, no, it's the sun. And the models of predicting the orbits of the planets were really complicated. And then they became really simple. Well, it's the same thing with city planning. If the car and the truck and everything is in the center of your solar system, it's very complicated. And there's all this error, just like predicting the orbits of planets. If you put vulnerable street users in the center of your solar system, both in wheelchairs, pedestrians, cyclists, everything becomes simple, and you'll make a great city. So we're going to change that model back to that one. So we'll have a human scale city again. And with that, I'll thank you for your attention, and we'll have some stuff.
Thank you so much, Ian. That was really inspiring and exhilarating. There's so many things doing and are doing actually, so but surely. So we have some time for questions, and there's some folks out there who have questions. I will take your question, repeat that so everybody can hear. So does anybody want to jump in?
So the what it'll do, it'll stunt the potential. There'll still be something going on, but it won't reach its potential. Well, if this were my city, I would two-way those streets as fast as I could, and I would remove as many of those traffic signals as I could and control it with stops. When we're walking around, if you see a stale green light, you know, it turned green, you didn't see it turn green, so you speed up. That's not what you want in your downtown. You want people to be respectful. You want them to be slower. I would put bulb outs at every intersection. I would narrow them to 2 lanes. I'd probably get rid of most of your turn lanes in your downtown. You have a fantastic grid. It's not about throughput. It's about place. And I would widen your sidewalks. I would use valley gutters for drainage, so the center of your street gets lower because the parking rows lean in instead of making the street high up. I would put in street trees and create a sense of enclosure. But I would definitely two-way them because you get double your access. Your businesses will do better if you have double your access. From a wayfinding perspective, you have to go past your destination, come back. Like it's not legible, and your downtown should be legible. And then what's the rush? You know, your city's 13 kilometers from end to end. Like, what's the rush? You're there. The moment you get here, you're there. Like, so it's completely unnecessary. And then on your big shopping streets, your big arterials, yeah, it's great. You can just drive in and drive out. But like, what if I know one of them's 4 lanes and you're thinking about 5 laning it? I would suggest 3 laning it. and saves you a ton of money on right-of-way acquisition. It will still provide tons of access. You want to get rid of the 4 lanes though, because you have to turn left out of the inner lane, and it causes all kinds of problems. But with a 3-lane street, you can have nice edges. You can have nice wide sidewalks, you can have street trees. And then with a little bit of vision, you can create some what we call form-based code, which doesn't really talk about the land use, it talks about the form. And you can start getting buildings up to the street, lining the street, creating a walkable environment. So instead of just driving to one place, doing your planned exchange, like you want to go to someplace and like pick up a new hammer at the hardware store. So you drive there, pick up your hammer, and you leave. But if you design the street like I'm talking about, you'll go and drive and you'll park and you'll go get your hammer. But on the way, you'll pass a flower shop and get some flowers for your sweetheart. You might meet some friends. You might buy an ice cream. You might stop in a cafe. You might you might watch an artist doing some display or something, and you'll achieve your planned exchange, but you'll achieve like 5, 6, 10 unplanned exchanges. And the quality of your city is in some people's minds, is the sum of the unplanned exchanges you experience on a daily basis. So this planned exchange is like a car thing. It's just it's just like one function. I'm going to do it, and you can still do that, but you can get all these other collateral benefits, and maybe you could even do it on your bike, or you could walk. And again, those places are so close to everything else here that you should be able to walk. Like, why is the store way at the back of the parking lot when it's really miserable to walk? And that's the way it is now. But over time, maybe a main street will develop, on one of these access ways to that store. That store can stay there, but you can have a walkable environment. And we're doing a lot of those sort of mall reconstruction, where we urbanize those sort of suburban ideas, and it just makes a more valuable, better city. And your tax base will go up, your access will go up, your taxes per acre will go up. Your infrastructures will cost a bit, but stay the same. So you'll end up with a better, more valuable city if you were to do that. And so you build 5 lanes in a city with 84,000 people. Like you're pursuing that conventional paradigm, and it seems like a good idea if you're interested in getting somewhere fast and back fast in your car. But over time, that utility will get consumed by what we call latent demand, and you'll just have more car dependency and more difficulty with your walking. It's not a sustainable pattern. It's tempting, but the most successful cities in the world are constrained. And if you constrain yourself to 3 lanes, your land uses and your behaviors and your transportation strategies will adjust, and you'll end up with a better city, probably more vibrant transit system and that kind of thing. I can't think of one single city that has succeeded through a strategy of widening and speeding up. If you could think of one, I'd love to visit it, but I've never come across one in my entire career. So yeah, I guess I agree with you. Two-way, two lanes. Yeah. Well, your downtown is so important to everything else. Yeah, it would be a very high priority. And then I think another priority is do no more harm. Like the very first thing I did at West Palm Beach, once I left beautiful Ottawa and went into place, was I went through the whole capital improvement plan, and I crossed out every single project that added car carrying capacity in the city, because I saw the harm it had done over the last 20 or 30 years. I thought, we got to stop the bleeding. Like if I was an emergency room doctor, do no more harm. And that's the first thing I would do. And then I would start repairing some of the conventional decisions that have been made, at the expense of the businesses and safety and the cycling community. And I'd start reallocating the right-of-way to in a more equitable manner. Yeah, I would put it way up there in my priority list. Well, you have a bunch of champions right here. First of all, I think who you elect is important. You should make it a campaign issue so that that people start promising these things. I would create some buzz through social media and have some ideas on various websites that people go to. Education and awareness are so important, because every night, if you watch television, you're going to see car ads where cars are moving through a city at very fast speeds, and there's no congestion or anything, and they're equated with freedom and these sorts of things. We need a bunch of messages in the other direction. I think we need to start changing the language, because language and culture are really related. And when somebody calls a widening an improvement, you need to say, wait a second, that's a widening. An improvement is a narrowing, or something like that. Because there's a lot of coded language in transportation planning, like upgrade, when they're talking about speeding things up. So watch for the coded language, because that affects culture. Remember the women's movement in the 70s? I mean, 70s, but my older sister told me that there was gender biased language, like chairman, policeman, fireman, manpower was human resources, so it was firefighter instead of fireman. And she said we need to change the language, because then it's more inclusive, and then women could start participating in vocations and stuff they couldn't before. So if you can change the language, you can change the culture. If you can change the culture, you can change decisions and outcomes. So start using objective language, like widening instead of improvement. So all these sorts of things. You want to change the culture. You want to share your values. You want to slow things down. Take a look at those the conventional paradigm and the traditional paradigm, and start advocating for the thing in the traditional list, because that's the history of your city. That's what you were founded on. And take a look at that universal equation, because it's literally how the best cities do it. And if you just follow that, your city will get better. Like we had a version of it at West Palm Beach. It was a litmus test. We said, does the change reward the short trip or the transit trip? And so I met with every city commissioner and talked to him or her about what that means in their decisions. I said, when you get this complicated issue to deal with, and you don't know because that's not your business, you're a nurse or something, that's not your background. Use that litmus test and you'll probably make the best decision. So give them that universal equation, and they say, if it aligns with that equation, it's probably a good idea. And if it doesn't, it's probably a bad idea. And give them the tools, language tools, awareness, education. Do more of this. I can't wait to get the other speakers tomorrow. This is the kind of way you build up a consensus for change. And that's what the best cities have done. Or small it, because then you can use the rest of it to help vulnerable people. And that's what cities are about, right? Is helping everybody. So in a lot of cities we go to, the excuse is we can't do that because it's too expensive. But when you think about it, it's actually in the long run way cheaper to do what we're talking about, way more affordable to keeping doing car dependent stuff. And the best example I can tell you is we're working in the energy corridor in Houston, Texas, and there are tons of money there, right? And very expensive buildings. And the energy corridor has its own little government, and it's private. It's kind of private. They look after their own infrastructure in that whole area. And they couldn't attract young chemical engineers to come there because they didn't, or their spouses didn't like the quality of life. You can make a lot of money, but nobody wanted to live there. And so when our consortium was getting interviewed by the panel, it was down to 2 groups, and there's 7 of these oil giants there, and the leader stood up and said, I don't understand what's wrong with Houston. And right out of Central Casting, cowboy boots, big buckle, and so the answer was bad bones. We said your street network is too big. The blocks are too big. So in New Orleans and places where young chemical engineers are going now, you have 4 streets for every 1 street you have. So you need 8 lanes when they have 4 2-lane streets. And it's much easier to walk around in a 2-lane environment than 8 lanes. And so we got the job, and we were halfway through our it's a big job, right? We're halfway through, 6 months in to just redesigning the energy corridor. So we're putting in new street network, we're putting in paths, we're investing in transit, and we have our pinup, our halfway pinup. And these same 7 guys show up, and we explain things to them. And the same guy, the leader, stands up. He's only a small guy, too. Stands up, but everyone, you hear a pin drop when that guy stands up, right? Because he's very powerful. And he goes, no, 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 no. I don't want any of this mamby-pamby coastal elitist BS, granola chewing stuff. Like, he says, I want real transportation solutions. And so I said, well, what do you mean? You know, real transportation solutions. I have no idea what you're talking about. And it was me, meant motor, right? Car stuff. And so I said, you're very angry. And why are you so viscerally against what we're suggesting here? And he goes, you want to know why? And I go, yes, I really do. I really want to know why. He says, I don't want to pay for it. He says, I don't want my tax money going to pay for these bike lanes and transit. And he says, no, I want real transportation solutions. So I go, okay. So how much of so you know how the country has a gross domestic product? Well, every city has a little gross domestic product. They call it the city wealth. How much of your city wealth in Houston do you think you spend on transportation all in? And it's like, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's like 16% of everything that they spend goes into transportation. So how much did New York City spend, with their tunnels and their underground and whatever? And it's like 10, 12%. And now let's go a little more socialistic. Let's go to Toronto. How much do they spend? And it's like 7 or 8%. Now let's go totally left, and we'll go to Copenhagen. It's like 4%. And they've got little roads just for bikes. So they've invested in the cheapest, inexpensive, most accessible transportation solutions ever, in the modern age with cars. And Houston is spending it on super expensive highways and whatnot. So I said to him, if you want to save tax money, invest in these things and not in highways and wider arterials and faster speeds. Because that, in the long run, will save you a ton of money, increase your quality of life, make a better city, attract young chemical engineers, and all this sort of thing. And this guy was stunned. Like, he's just standing there. And he starts rocking on his heels. And no one's going to say anything until this guy sits down, right? So he's walking there, and then he turns slowly to his friends, the other 6, and the leadership there. Said, well, gentlemen, it looks like we're going to be building a shit ton of bike lanes and networks. And so the thing was, he was actually serious about the financial implications of motordom. It never clued to him that he was a proponent of the most expensive way of getting around ever invented in the history of the world. And then when he figured out that what we were talking about was way more affordable and better for the economy and for social issues and everything else and equity, he clued it in. And then so that was it. He was going to kill our project, and then he became a 100% backer for our project.
Okay, you're going to be with us tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, not as an official speaker, but just like the day, right?
I won't have a time.
No, exactly. So just try this. So if you've got a question, maybe you can have a nice casual conversation with them over lunch or breakfast or whatever. I think we're going to call the questions for now because it is starting to get late and the couple of those things that we have to do tonight. So I just want to say thank you so much.